Greetings, YouTube. I'm currently reading the Witcher tabletop role-playing game. Yes, I know I owe you folks a Pathfinder 2nd Edition video, and I will be doing it hopefully during the first week of November as I am on holiday that week. It's going to be a long video. I know this. I have to sit down and really put some effort into that, so I'm not just going to do it off the cuff like I'm doing this one. But in that game, which is a fantasy game, I'd probably say it's more of the grim and gritty, darker fantasy, as opposed to like the high fantasy of Pathfinder First Edition, or many of the most editions of the D&D that I'm familiar with. I don't have any experience with fifths, so don't ask me. And they're talking about the types of weapons that people have access to, and one of the things they talk about are small blades, and they talk about the kind of thing that everyone carries, and they discuss the dagger. Now, this is a dagger. In particular, it's a Gilhibben dagger, and this is the kind of thing that many people think of when they think of a fantasy dagger. This thing right here. It's got a little bit of a guard. It's got a double-edged blade, and it's designed for poking things. That's primarily what a dagger is designed for, poking things, okay? Sorry about my voice. I apologize. This is a knife. And particularly, it's a puko, a type of knife which is still in use today in many parts of the world. And it is reminiscent of the types of knives that people have been using for thousands of years. A single edge, back is not sharpened. It has either no guard or a very small guard, and it's designed for simple, everyday tasks. The Opinel, carried by Frenchmen, all over the place, is a good example of a knife that is it's ubiquitous. It's designed for everyday tasks. Open your mail, cutting strings, ropes, lines, opening boxes, a little bit of food prep, eating your lunch, that kind of thing. That's what this is for. If you're not, it's not what you're going to be using for heavy-duty work. You could use it for butchering a rabbit or a fish, but not much bigger than that, okay? But it's the kind of thing that everybody would have around at hand. If you say knife, this is sort of what you're talking about when it comes to the day-to-day tasks of a person that carries a blade, this right here. There's a significant difference between these two things, okay? I'm blocking my eyeballs off, sorry about that. And it bugs me to no end when I see in a fantasy game where they talk about everybody carries a dagger. This is a dagger. Yes, there are daggers that have shorter blades, absolutely. For example, you could just take out this section here and the blade would be much closer to, say, the type of dagger maybe you're thinking of. This is a longer, more stiletto style. But it's still a dagger. It's a weapon. This is a tool. Now, a weapon can be a tool, and a tool can be a weapon, but there is a difference in their fundamental design. This is not being designed as anything other than a weapon. That you can use it for other things is incidental. This is designed primarily as a tool. That you can use it as a weapon is incidental. Okay? Medieval peasants didn't carry these. Whether it was in the real world or in a high fantasy setting or a dark, grim and gritty setting like The Witcher, this is not what everybody carries. The really wealthy might carry one of these as a status symbol. Why? Because they don't need to carry a knife. They've got servants. They have footmen. They have people to cut up their food for them. They don't need to carry a knife because they're not laborers. They're not the common folks. They can carry things like this because it's flashier. It's more expensive. It shows that you have money and are willing to defend yourself. It is a weapon. This is a tool. It bothers me. This is not something carried by everybody. This is. You will find this on the person of any peasant, any laborer, any general person in a city. This is what they're going to have on their person every day. And it's going to be ubiquitous, and it is going to be used for good or ill every single moment of their lives. that they need an edge. This is a purpose-built weapon. This one right here is designed to create very deep wound channels. That's very pointy. If the person is not wearing any kind of heavy clothing, heavy armor, or even heavy clothing, this is going to go really far into their abdomens. It is not something that you want to get hit with. This is long enough to reach under someone's rib cage and hit their heart. And if it does that, they're dead. It's much harder to kill somebody with one of these. Not impossible, but harder. And you're more likely to injure yourself because it has no guard. You're not going to think of this right off the bat as something you want to attack somebody with. Throw in 7 or 8 pints of alcohol, and maybe they will. Drunk people will use anything as a weapon. They'll use broken glass. This is less likely to kill people than this is. Now, you could argue that because there are more of these, maybe over time this is actually used to kill more people. I don't know. But it wasn't designed that way. Like cars are not designed to kill people. They still kill 40,000 plus people a year. But it wasn't their purpose. But they're everywhere. And so that's why they kill people. You know, sometimes that statistics aren't in your favor. But these have probably been used to kill people a hell of a lot more intentionally than these have. Because that's what it's designed for. It is a weapon. And you can really drive this home. You've got a guard to stop your hand from going up on it. It's got a skull crusher at the back, on the pommel. It's going to do some damage. This, not so much. Not to mention this particular model is a work of art, and I would never want to harm anyone with it because I think it's a work of art, and it actually sits right here on my desk every single minute of my life because I think it is so pretty. I just take it out to look at it. So yeah, tool, weapon. I think it's important that we don't confuse them. Stop thinking that every medieval peasant carries a dagger. They don't. They carry a knife. A slashing tool, primarily thrusting secondary. This is a thrusting tool, slashing weapon secondarily. This one isn't particularly sharp. It's a Gilhibben, it's mostly for show, but I really like the overall proportions, and it's very shiny. Made me smile, and I got it for a song, so that's why I picked it up. So, dangerous. Designed to be dangerous. Can be dangerous. So can a hand axe, one that was never meant to be harm people. If you're going into the backwoods, take my word for it, you should probably not carry a hand axe unless you're very skilled with them. Carry a folding saw. You're much less likely to harm yourself. You'll be able to harvest the wood you need. And if you have to drive a tent peg, grab a rock. This is something everybody can use, and nobody's going to bat an eye if you're carrying it around the streets. This is going to draw attention. If you're wealthy, maybe not as much attention. But if you're not wealthy and you're seen wearing something like this, people know you're looking for trouble or you're expecting trouble. If you've got one of these stuck behind your back in the sheath, ready to be drawn, people know that you are ready for trouble. Maybe they want to avoid being around you. You see something like this on your belt, they're not going to even blink an eye. You're just a dude or a dudette. No big deal. So, yeah. People in the medieval settings or fantasy settings, or whether they're high fantasy or dark and gritty fantasy, don't carry these every day. They carry these. And I think it's important that we remember that. This is the kind of thing you're going to see everywhere. And it's not the same thing as a dagger. And it bugs me, and it's always bugged me. And it's just kind of come to the fore because I'm reading it right now. I just finished reading the weapons section in the rule book. Now I'm reading the armor section. I quite like the fact that they have helmets, torso, and then limb armor. That makes me very happy. The fact that they have recognized that wearing something on your head is important. And most fantasy games completely and utterly ignore that. Though I do have one fantasy heartbreaker I read where there are 6 pages of helmets. That may be paying attention to the Neva helmet just a little too much. So let's talk about, do you think that everybody in a fantasy setting carries a knife or a dagger? Does it matter to you? Is a cutting tool, and you're just not going to worry about it? Do you think it should be within the context of a game that it does matter? That if people see somebody carrying a dagger, they're going to assume that they're more dangerous, or they're expecting more danger than a person that's just carrying around an ordinary everyday puko or some other kind of, cultural blade. So let's talk about the types of small blades that people carry in a fantasy setting. Which ones do you think are appropriate? Which ones do you think are not appropriate? And do you see a distinction at all? Thank you.